I did want to start with the big one. As you look over this work, inclusion work, DEI, even the current backlash over your career, before we dig into the numbers, how would you characterize this moment in time?
I
Hopeful,
would
not
say,
hopeful?
I have to remain hopeful in order to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find that hope somewhere within it. Otherwise, you won't be able to carry, I often say, the weight and the weight, the
Yes.
WEIGHT and the WAIT of the work.
Yep.
And so having that hope to know that change is possible, we've seen some of it,
We have.
we've seen it. It won't happen overnight.
No.
The systems that exist weren't created overnight,
Right.
but we have to stay the course.
So let's dig into this data. You broke this news here
We did.
at Aspen ESG, which is so wonderful. And I was in the room as we were going through it, like everyone pulled it up on their phones, and there was real ripple. There's some surprises in here. Can you walk us through?
There are a few surprises. And I'll admittedly tell you that even as we were preparing to do the research, this is our sixth piece of research around business and racial justice. It's our fifth year. So we did two in 2020,
Yeah.
2 weeks after George Floyd was murdered, and then another that August after Philando Castile was murdered in Minnesota.
I appreciate you for being so responsive.
Yeah, it was important
Yeah.
because we were having conversations with clients about what do we do. We remember
Yes.
those lengthy lists,
Yes.
these high aspirations and goals that were being set,
Yes.
but what
Nervous
should business be
CEOs.
doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we got out in the field pretty quickly and have done one every year since then. And I will tell you, back to your question, as we were preparing to go out and we were preparing the questionnaire, I was a little concerned
Yeah. The
about
backlash.
what, and about, right, that the data would say something different. And so I was concerned, but we knew it was necessary to do. And I remained hopeful even in that process when we went out to field in May, mid-May, and got it back. So
So, Trish, a couple of things really stood out to me right off the bat, knowing that we're in this very strange, sort of politically charged season. Number
that's putting
one,
it lightly, huh?
I know, I'm trying,
Right,
I'm
right.
trying to make sure
Remain
people watch
hopeful.
the video. Most people in the US are concerned about racism. That really stood out to me. That means that the messaging and the understanding and the education of what systemic racism means is getting out there.
And that people are acknowledging it. They're seeing it. Their antennas are up. I think the last 5 years and this awakening has caused people to look in places and spaces to see it where they may never have noticed it before.
Yep.
To be more diligent in looking around them where they work, where they live, where they play.
See, and that's important because then the number two, and we won't go through all the entire list, but the amount of people in the US who have experienced racism is rising. And it is since September 2020, it's jumped 9 points from 41% to 50%.
Sure.
What do you make of that number?
Again, I'm surprised it's not higher.
Right.
I am surprised it's not higher, but I do think, again, it's the awareness
Yeah.
and seeing those things in play, whether they're microaggressions or
Yeah.
some very macro things that are happening. I think people are more privy to it and they're hearing and reading about
Yeah.
instances of more. So, and I think people are quite candidly, because of the political landscape, emboldened also
Yeah.
to maybe behave in ways that they hadn't before.
That's right. That's exactly right. They're saying the quiet
that-
parts out loud.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to say, which was really, as someone who covers this space as a journalist, workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion is in demand, and the employers are who we trust
Absolutely.
in this society.
I was fascinated, Ellen,
Yeah.
to see that the institution that is most trusted to address racism in this country,
Yeah.
not just in an organization,
Yeah.
but to address social ills
Yeah.
of systemic racism, is my employer.
Not all corporate life, my
My
personal
employer, 71%.
And it's not just because the pool is pretty shallow out there for other institutions. It's because my employer is doing a good job.
Sure. So I will tell you, government and media are pretty low as well.
I accept my place in the food chain round down here.
However, the business community is around 50%. So
Yeah.
again, 20% difference
Yeah.
between the two. But my employer is the institution that is most trusted to address systemic racism and the one that is doing the best at it.
So do you expect this data, again, it's brand new out there in the world, to embolden and reassure nervous leaders who are wondering if their race-based hiring program is going to be targeted for legal attack, or if they're not saying the right things internally? How do you expect people are going to receive this who are in
That is
corporate
my
life?
sincere prayer, that it will help to empower DEI leaders who are working day in and day out to make the case, to
Yeah.
demonstrate the value, to show the efficacy and the need for the work. One, two, that they then have some ammunition and data
Yep.
to make that case.
That's right.
With leaders around their organization, and then some information that will help to inform their next steps.
Yep.
Because the data also looks at who people want to hear from when you're talking about issues surrounding systemic racism and DEI issues.
Right.
Where you should be having those conversations, with whom. And so hopefully it also gives some tools or some information that will help as they look at their strategies and their work going forward.
And as they talk to their risk officers and their legal officers and say, help me protect this work, as opposed to help protect me from the backlash.
That's it. If anyone gets anything out of the research, I hope that they get that they need to recommit, not retreat.
Yes, me too. Let's talk about the media, because we typically rank low. I will own that.
Not you.
Thank you.
Not you. You're exempt from that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I walk alone.
Yeah.
What advice do you have in general for media to do a better job covering not only the nuances of inclusion work, but also the nuances of identity?
One, become better educated,
Yeah.
right? To be culturally curious, to learn more, and to be very intentional about not perpetuating the bias, not inadvertently or otherwise being a part of the problem. We saw even in the research that, in fact, those individuals or groups that are, in fact, fueling the flame around the divisiveness are, one, politicians,
Yep.
but also social and other media, right? So, and that was from the respondents, that we feel that we're not getting the real deal. We can't trust what we're reading, hearing, seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is about trying to be a part of the solution, telling the full story, supporting it with data, not rhetoric, not weaponizing the language, and to continue to be curious and learn, become more educated in not just taking a story to run for sensationalism, but as you do, look at the holistic aspect of whatever you're covering.
One of the things that comes up in almost every session here at the ESG Summit has been when and how important leaders, powerful people, people with actual position power should weigh in on important social issues. And we've seen a retreat on issues of race and equity, and maybe some more courage or maybe some more conviction around sustainability, which is good. What is your best advice, or what have you seen work in the field for executives who are looking for a way to do a better job weighing in, both internally, this is all a communications thing, and externally?
First and foremost is to recognize that you cannot not speak, that silence speaks. Plain and simple. That being said, you can't and don't have to speak about everything all of the time. Every organization and leader is on their own journey at a different place in space. Understand the needs of your people, your employees, as well as your external consumers, what have you, your other key stakeholders, to know what are the issues we should be speaking to? What is it that we should be telling those audiences? And not just in a time of crisis,
Yeah.
right? And not just when you've met the goal, but bringing them along on the journey.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that need for continued communications, even if it's to say, we haven't gotten there,
Right. We're working on
or we
it.
missed the goal, like
Yeah.
we're still it's work in progress.
Yep.
It's that need that we see come out even in the data in terms of telling the story.
Yeah.
And that it should be the leadership, but it also has to be other voices, which is another fascinating finding from the research in terms of the messengers.
So this is also about sharing power.
Yes.
When you share voice, you
Yes.
share power.
Absolutely.
What have you seen work in corporate structures of giving people an opportunity to weigh in without exhausting them and making them the ambassadors of this work?
Absolutely, and have to carry that weight themselves. So there are a few things. One thing I want to say is that the research shows that the people that are most trusted to discuss social issues, racial issues, and DEI issues are, one, people like me,
Yes, I
right?
trust you with everything.
Right. And people of racial diversity background,
Yeah.
right? In terms of these topics,
Right.
most trusted. Least trusted, this is fascinating, racially diverse executives.
Oh no. The moderator
Two,
needs a hug.
right? Two, the next up from the bottom, CHRO, CEO, CDIO. So there's this dichotomy
That's the
of
whole card game.
my employer being the most trusted, but the leadership being the least trusted, which demonstrates the need to share this voice,
Yes.
right? That you have to bring employee voices into not only sharing what's happening, but the dialogue to create
Yes.
the work,
Yes.
to get input, to get insights, to accept and invite criticisms and critiques
Yes. Yes.
along the way, to ensure that the work actually is working and that the employee voice is front and center. That's why I think we're seeing one of the things that I think has been working well over the last year or so is the sort of reimagination of ERGs or affinity
Right,
groups, or
right.
whatever you may call them. We call them employee network groups at Edelman. But those groups really being a force for change, a place for building community, for sharing feelings about what's happening, for then helping to voice those feelings
Right.
to leaders,
Right.
and then creating new programs, policies as part of that.
Where they've been on a learning journey themselves. You know, you've heard me speak about this here, in fact, that I really focus on the middle layer of management.
Yes, yes.
I love the middle layer of management. It's where hopes and dreams go to die. It's where innovations, it's where innovations are going, it's where innovations come through and are executed.
Absolutely.
It's where hopes and dreams go to die. It's where good ideas are formed.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they thrive, sometimes they don't. And they are the most unsupported in terms of what leadership is. But what I'm hearing you say, it's in this data, is that if we really pay attention to this middle layer and give them the training and the microphone they need to learn out loud, especially if they're majority culture,
Absolutely.
in front of their peers,
Absolutely.
that it's going to have a ripple effect.
It will. It will have a ripple effect not only in the productivity and what's created, but we've also seen that they'll be more willing to stay there and to work there, remain there.
Yeah.
Right? So
I like that.
you create this a relationship that is not solely transactional, right? I always say you can't build community if you don't communicate,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You can't create belonging if there's no conversation and
Yep.
no dialogue and discussion. And so that's what I think this research supports, the value of, the need for, from the employee and for the organization and for the leadership
Yeah.
within the organization
Yep.
to really be successful and to make some progress.
Speaking of the CEOs, and I don't want to pick on the C-suite here, but I do hear routinely that people within the organization are concerned, although they trust their organization and they trust them to handle these big issues, they're not 100% sure that their CEO yet has the facility to speak freely and authentically on the things that are impacting the world, race and equity being only just one of them. So that means, based on this research, that as we begin to develop the talent within the organization, it changes the pipeline of who can ultimately lead the organization. I think that's a very good thing.
I think it's an excellent thing. And again, it reinforces the need to listen to that
Yep.
middle and junior management that you're saying, to
Yep.
be able to learn what you may not know,
Yep.
to continue to be curious to learn as well.
And to bake it into, as you said, the policies and the procedures and the protocols. Going into new markets, of course, but also being good corporate citizens,
Oh, for sure.
stewards, stakeholders.
Well, that and being able to do better business, right?
Yeah.
If you understand your consumer base, their nuances, their needs, their mores, you can better ideate and create whatever you're developing, whatever you sell will reach them more. It will resonate more. And we also saw that as well, that from a brand standpoint, brands that understand and make an attempt to understand and reach diverse communities have greater affinity, have
Right.
greater support. for those brands, right? Because you're trying to see me.
Yeah, that's right. And
You're
it's not-
trying to understand.
It's not just a rainbow sticker.
Exactly.
This is actually an authentic relationship.
Exactly.
So there were so many good surprises here at a difficult time. It's a crazy year. I know that. So we meet here next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Where do you see corporate America or global corporations heading given the trajectory of this work?
My hope and my prayer is that they are leading with clarity, with courage, with confidence in driving increased racial equity and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. That it is not something that is here today, gone tomorrow. That this whiplash we've somewhat begun to see will reset, and that the work will continue to forge ahead. We cannot afford to take back steps. I remember having a conversation with the CEO. We counseled over 400 clients after 2020 to about
my Lord.
2022. Different sizes, scales, industries, sectors, geographies. And I remember vividly one CEO asking, where will we be in 5 years? Like, do we think anything will happen? And I said to him then, this was again fall 2020, shame on us
If it doesn't.
if it doesn't.
Yep.
Because we have this moment.
Yep.
We have this opportunity to really accelerate work that in some instances for companies have been in the pipeline. For others, they just figured out that Black and brown people existed in 2020, I guess. But nonetheless, some reevaluated their programs and looked at their strategies and made changes. But with that being said, we did see some progress over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing some again, those are backtracking. I don't think we're probably fully committed initially.
Right.
But those who are doing the work even before 2020 will continue to do the work.
Yes. That's a wonderful place to end. Trisch Smith, thank you so very much. Final question for you, and this is a personal one. You've been in this conversation for a long time as we started out. How are you doing?
So funny. I was going to write a piece on this for DI practitioners. It is a lot. I talked about the weight and the weight at the beginning.
Yep.
And that's real. It is profound. I think for myself personally, and I think anyone doing this work, you have to have some other fueling
Yep.
center that you're getting something poured into you as you're doing the work.
You speak like a person of faith.
Yeah, so that's mine. It's prayer.
Yeah.
It's my faith life that helps to ground what I'm doing and to inform what I'm doing. I actually see this work for me as a form of actually like corporate ministry, if you will, that I'm able to be a part of change in places and spaces, as you mentioned, that we may not often get to occupy or have a voice within.
Your clients are lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you in sharing this information and this burst of optimistic energy
Yes.
that we desperately need at this time.
Keep the faith.
You take care.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.